And joining me now is the next guest speaker from the St. Lawrence River Institute Science and Nature UNtapped series, the River Institute's own Dr. Leigh McGaughey. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, Gabe. Thanks for having me.
All right, so first of all, let's start with your own background in science and what's led you up to this point with the River Institute.
Okay. So I started my science career in South Africa back in the 90s. I moved to Australia and I worked there for 4 years for fisheries and for the Antarctic Division, the Australian Antarctic Division. And following that, I took up a PhD at the University of British Columbia. That was in the mid 2000s, and I was there for 5 years, and I got a postdoc position with the European Union, so working for the European Commission, and that was in 2010. So I was there for a few years, and then I came across here to settle in Cornwall just 3 years ago. So I've been at the River Institute now for just over 2 years, and yeah, I'm working as a research scientist here. So that's my journey to get all the way to here.
Well, that's incredible, and I think it gives us a good opportunity too, because whenever I do interviews with the River Institute, I like to talk about the importance of the river to this community. It's something we may take for granted, but for someone such as yourself, you talk about that you've worked with the EU, you've worked in Australia with Antarctica. How does our river compare on a global scale? Because the reality is it is a major waterway in the world.
It is a major waterway, and it's been really interesting for me because I came in. I guess it was all new to me, right? And I had this global perspective coming from all these different places and doing different projects. But my research had gone from being very specific sites when I was back in South Africa, and then getting a little more general when I was in Australia. So we were doing a whole state. We were doing the assessment for fisheries for a whole state. And then by the time I got to the EU, we were developing ecosystem indicators for, a whole region. So the whole of Europe. In fact, I was involved in a global project where we were trying to develop indicators for the whole of Africa, for the whole of Pacific and the Caribbean, a project called Biopama. And it was really great to get to this level. But to be honest, to come back now to somewhere where I work with the local community on a local issue. So now I've had to learn, what is the history of the St. Lawrence River. So of course, everything to do with the dam coming in, the industry coming in, the legacy contaminants, these sorts of challenges that we have, but also how these challenges have been overcome over the last 20, 30 years, with remediation, and to see the benefits that have come out of that. So it's been really great for me in a way to come as an outsider, because it's like a fresh, set of eyes on this system. And yet I get to appreciate all the challenges that, the area has had, and also the gains they've made. And now also look at what are the current challenges that we're trying to face and trying to deal with. So I guess what I wanted to say is I've, been through this process globally, but it's been really nice to get to know the area locally and to deal with the community on a nice local scale.
Absolutely, and I'm sure a lot of that will factor into your presentation on Wednesday. So let's talk a little bit about that. It's going to be on the Great River Rapport, which is your big project. So maybe first we could start with background of that report and what the background is.
So yeah, the project started well before I got here. There's notes going back at the River Institute on it as an idea back in 2015 when the River Institute was doing some strategic planning. Jeff Rydell, he always says, the question he gets asked the most is, what is the health of the St. Lawrence River? And he wanted to put together a health report. The River Institute has been in partnership with MCA, the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, and Henry Lickers was president at that time, and he inspired the framework for this river report. So he suggested that it should be framed in the Thanksgiving address. So that's the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address. So between Jeff and Henry, this really got the project started back in 2015, 2016, but it wasn't until 2018 when I arrived, and I guess that was really when the project sort of took off as its own entity. So we've been working with MCA ever since I started, and we're really, really grateful. There's lots of health reports on lots of waterways all over the world, really. But I think what makes this one really special and unique is this partnership that we have with the Mohawks of Akwesasne. And so we're framing it in the Thanksgiving address. And yeah, for the last 2 years, we spent the first year reaching out to the public, running community events, trying to find out what people care about, for the river. What are they worried about? What are their concerns? What do they think the biggest challenges are? So really, we spent the first year asking the public, like, if we were to produce this health report, what would you like to see in it? And then after a year, we got that feedback in, and we took that to some scientists, and we said, okay, the public wants to know this. What indicators can we develop to give them the answers? And we're really at that point right now, in the process where we've finalized a list of indicators. So I'll be talking about that on Wednesday. We have a list of 36 indicators that we're trying to get the data together for. So we're reaching out to scientists in the region, asking them for their data, and we're trying to pull that together to get the report out. And it's, obviously, I think the public just wants the report. You've been going at this for 2 years. When can we have it on our hands? And I want to say we're going, the best we can. We heard what you had to say. We've approached the scientists to get the information. And right now we're just writing to everyone on the river who does research on the river and saying, would you mind donating your data to this report? We'd like to tell the public what the health of the river is. So that's, I guess, a history of the project and where we're at right now.
Excellent. So it certainly sounds like Wednesday will be interesting. And of course, there's 2 ways to watch. They can catch it here on your TV, and although there's also a live broadcast on Microsoft Teams through the St. Lawrence River Institute website. But maybe just briefly, why is that engagement with the public so important?
I found it remarkable since I got to Cornwall. I arrived here. I had been previously living in Vancouver, and I arrived in this community, and I was really welcomed by many of the community members, people like Karen Cooper, who was running the Science and Nature UNtapped at the time, and introduced me to a community who's so engaged in environmental issues, and having this opportunity to share the science that we do at the Institute is kind of unique. All the other institutes and places I've worked at, we're doing the science, we write it up, we submit it into journals, and that's really, what life is as a scientist is like. And you realize when you have a community that's so interested in the environmental concerns, where is that outlet for them to find out what we're doing? So I guess this leads on to also the Science and Nature UNtapped series, right? It's an opportunity for the scientists at the River Institute and elsewhere to share what they're doing with the public.
And just finally, obviously the format of this, the online format was instituted a couple months ago. I believe that we're already at the 4th or 5th one. Obviously you're the guest speaker, but now you're really involved with planning every one. So maybe we could just finish off with your thoughts on how that series has gone so far throughout the summer and in its adapted role due to COVID-19.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. It's been great because, personally, I love speaking, with a live audience, and we always went to Schnitzels, and it was always a fantastic atmosphere, and it was well supported by the community, and you got to interact with the people and answer questions directly. And now we're online, and as you're speaking, and you'll see when I do it on Wednesday, you're speaking in your house to a computer, and it's not got the same feel. But the great thing about this series going online is now we have the opportunity to reach a global audience, and for instance, for me, I have a family that, lives in South Africa. I have friends and colleagues in Europe, Australia, South Africa too, the US, other parts of Canada. And it's an opportunity for me to share my research and let people from elsewhere, be able to listen to this. So it takes us from having a local series at a pub to now potentially having an international audience, which I think is really exciting.
Absolutely. It's wonderful that we're able to showcase the great things that are happening locally, to that global audience. So on that note, I'd like to thank you very much and good luck on Wednesday. And once again, people can tune in at 7 p.m. on Wednesday on the River Institute website or at 9 p.m. right here on your TV. So thank you once again.
Thanks a lot, Gabe. Thanks for having me.